I had to take off my pants, and she hung them out the window as we're driving to church to try to dry them off a little bit. I was just sort of sitting back there all embarrassed, and it's sort of half dried, and put my pants back on real quick for Easter service. I remember that one.
Welcome to the Spencer Whiteout podcast. Rated R.
You have some criminal charges with you, bro. Guess I'm where avoiding the shark.
Yo, great turbo neck guy.
I'll give you a kiss. You give me your number.
That checked out a ton, dude. Tell me you felt.
We're Americans. We're the ones that are descendants from the 1776 musket-bearing motherfuckers.
Welcome to the Spencer Whiteout podcast, where we collect experiences as badges, memories as treasures, and stories as wealth. Recorded on July 29th, 2021, this is part 2 of a special conversation with my dad and his dad. In this episode, we tell stories of the Rooster rampage, rotten eggs, a car crash, standing up for Christ, and YWAM ministry across the globe. It's been a blessing to preserve this account of family history, and I'm happy to share it with this world as well.
Oh, this is something special.
Let's dive in.
Let's talk about the chicken chase story. And how old was Dad at this point?
I must have been about 7 or 8 years old or so. And so we, as a family, had moved up to Santa Rosa, so Northern California, and had a small acre of land. We had a little small farm type of thing with animals and chickens and things. And so I think it was one of my jobs when Dad was busy doing something, being responsible.
That's what I'm talking about.
My job was to feed the chickens. And we had a mean rooster one time.
All the chickens were these nice chickens.
Yeah.
They just cluck around, and except for one. There was one huge rooster.
Yep. He was a mean rooster. So I saw my dad go in there with a trash can lid and then a broom sometimes, or the feed can or something. It'd sort of keep that rooster away, and then he'd pour in the feed, into their little container or something. So I thought, okay, I got to do that. So I got my trash can lid, and I got the feed can, and I push open the door, and the rooster sort of eyeing me and seeing me coming into his little area. But anyway, I sort of held the trash can lid. Well, he just went crazy and started attacking me, and I got scared, and I just dropped the trash can lid, dropped the food all over, and I just ran out of the chicken coop.
He was running all the way to the house, which is quite a ways.
Yeah, I was just running and screaming.
Running like crazy.
Help.
And this big rooster was right behind him.
Yep.
He's flapping his wings and running full bore right after him with his pecker right at teeth.
He was trying to pick me, and so, man, I was running, and I got all the way to the front gate, and I ran through the gate and slammed the gate closed, and the rooster stopped, and then he just turned around, and he just strutted all the way back to the pen, and he pushed his way through the gate back into the pen.
This is getting out of hand.
With his other hens.
With all the hens.
Oh, man. So, Dad, what did you decide to do after that?
So I decided, well, this rooster's been causing enough trouble long enough. So I decided we're going to eat him.
And what do you do with it?
You eat it. How revolting.
So what I did is I got me a cardboard box, which was just about the right size to put the rooster in it.
Perfect.
So I go in the pen with this cardboard box, and that rooster saw me coming, and he knew this is it. So he was cowering in the corner. He got as small as he could, way in the corner. That went over, I just put this box right over him, slid my hand in and got a hold of that rooster, so I held him in the box. So I took him up, and you know how I slaughtered the chickens?
Warning. Entering graphic territory in 3, 2, 1.
Well, the way my dad used to do it when I was a kid, he would wring their necks. So he'd catch the chicken, and he'd get a hold of his head and give it a whip with his hand, and it would jerk the head right off that chicken.
Oh, man.
So the chicken would fall down on the ground, and the funniest thing in the world is the chickens don't die. Even though he no longer has his head, that chicken will run around the yard for probably 5 or 10 minutes.
Minutes?
Yeah.
Minutes?
Yeah,
I thought it
it'll
was only
run.
like 10
it'll
seconds.
take off running, flapping his wings and
while.
running
What?
without his head on.
For that long, just bleeding all over the place.
Yeah.
That's
And
disgusting.
so I figured I was going to be smart. I wasn't going to have that chicken run all over the place, bleeding everywhere. So across the backyard, I had this clothesline, and I rigged up a bunch of hangman's noose. I had a whole bunch of them. So I was going to slaughter all these chickens. I had 8 or 10 chickens. So I had all these chickens all lined up to slaughter, and they're all alive. And so I'd get one at a time out of the pen. And so I'd slip the hen's feet in the noose, hanging on the clothesline. And I'd let the chicken down. I'd take hold of his head, and I had a butcher knife. And so I'm holding the head, and I whacked the head off. And so then the chicken is hanging by his feet because his feet are in the noose. So pretty soon I had a whole clothesline, had all these chickens all hanging in a row.
Decapitated.
All of them hanging without their heads, and they're dripping all over the ground.
It's so gruesome.
So we had chicken for dinner.
I guess you got to do what you
After
got to
we
do,
plucked
right,
it.
Papa?
Yeah.
I killed them all. They're dead. Every single one of them.
Well, the next part my wife didn't like. The next part is you have to take the chicken and you dunk it in this tub of hot water, and you got to pull all the feathers off.
Yeah.
You got to completely get all the feathers off before you can cut up the chicken to eat it. So that was the part my wife hated, but she did it.
How could you do this to me?
That was the one big challenge of eating chickens.
Yeah. Hey, Papa, well, Grandma just texted me and told me to ask you about taking the steer to the market. Do you know what that is?
Yeah. Well, since we had this little mini farm, actually we had 1 acre, but there was like about a 5-acre piece right behind us that we could let the animals out there on it. So anyway, I had been raising calves. And so I had this one cow. That night, the cow that I had just bought got out. It got through the fence somewhere, and it was gone.
Oh, boy.
I thought, oh no, where did he go? So I'm checking with all the neighbors, and I'm checking the fence. I didn't even see where it got out, but somehow or another, there was a flaw in the fence. I called the police, I called the rangers, I called the neighbors, and nobody knew anything about this cow. And so a couple of days later, I get a call from the ranger. Way up the road from our house was a park.
Yeah, Spring Lake
Park.
Yeah.
And behind the park, there's this mountain back there. And it says, hey, we've got this cow up on the mountain, and he comes down to the lake to get a drink, and he goes back up the mountain. And I think he had this calf up there. So we go up there, and we find the calf up on the mountain. And so the cow is trying to take care of his little baby calf.
Okay.
She had the calf
up on the hill.
The calf was born up on the mountain from the cow.
Yeah.
Okay. And so she's trying to take care of this calf, just born. And so I went home and got the truck and drove it up there to the lake. So then I get the calf in my arms, and I sit on the back of the truck while my wife drives the truck home. And the cow is treading along right behind because she's trying to stay with her calf.
So
I'm sitting on the back of the truck holding the calf, and the cow just trailed right along behind, just followed
Came
us
all the way home.
So we drove it into the backyard, shut the gate, and then gave her the calf. So now we've got our cow back. I didn't finish the other story.
Oh, there's another part. Okay.
So this cow, it got older, and so the calf grew up enough where it's not nursing on the cow anymore. So I decided to sell the cow. I put these gates up on the side of my pickup that I built out of just scrap lumber I had. And so I put a ramp up to the truck, and I finally managed to get the cow into the truck and put the tailgate up and then this other gate. And so I got it all kind of tied together. And so the cow is in the pickup truck with this fence around it that I had built. And so I'm driving to where what do they call it?
An auction
The
or something.
auction.
Yeah.
They have this auction where you sell animals. And so I'm driving to the auction, and I'm driving right by the high school. And there's a bunch of kids out there, so I got distracted a little bit. And so I'm looking at stuff, and then I look back. I'm headed for this telephone pole. And so I swerved a little bit so I didn't hit the pole. And when I swerved, it threw the cow against the side of the fence, and it busted off. And so the cow fell out of the truck. And so now, here I am at the high school, and here's this cow at the high school. And now what am I going to do?
Yeah.
The cow fell all the way out of the truck.
Yeah, on the ground.
That's
crashed
crazy.
up her back. Yeah. Anyway, through a lot of trouble, I did manage to get it back on the car. I don't know how I did it. I must have had the ramp with me or something.
Yeah.
So anyway, I got it back on the truck, and I take it to the auction with this big sore on its back because it fell on its back.
He'll live.
And this guy bought the cow, so anyway, that was the cow story.
Wow.
Was the cow like moaning in pain when it flew off?
The cow seemed to be fine.
That's so funny. I love that.
There was another story which I thought was really funny. The chicken chasing Keith up to the house. Well, there was another chicken that had a little string of baby chicks. In our place, the chickens ran free.
Yeah.
And so there was one chicken that kept laying eggs somewhere, and we didn't know where she was laying her eggs. We couldn't find it. So we finally just kind of gave up. And so one day, here comes this chicken out across the yard with about a dozen baby chicks trailing along behind her. I said, wow, look at that, you know. And so it was pretty amazing to see this mother hen with all her little chicks. It was really funny.
You just got 12 new chickens.
Yeah. So 10 or 12 baby chicks trailing along behind her. I learned how to talk chicken. So it was really kind of funny because you could hear what the mother did. So when the mother made this certain noise, the chicks would all come running because it was the signal there's something to eat. And so whenever the mother would be pecking around, she'd find a worm or a bug or something. So she'd go, it wasn't just, it was real fast. And so the chicks would all come running. And so I found out that I could get the chicks to all come running to me. I just go out there, and they come running. Well, anyway, one day,
that's funny.
And at the time, we had this milk cow, and the barn was like a large room. The cow would hang out in this barn. It was just dirt floor with hay on it and everything. And so the cow was in there a lot of times, in and out. Well, so the cow was out in the yard, and so I came up to the barn. And in the barn was this chicken with all her baby chicks. And the cow comes in. This cow is an enemy for her baby chicks. So it was the funniest thing. Here's this huge cow and this little bitty chicken. She decides she's going to take on this cow. And so here's this fight. It's a dog fight between the cow and the little chicken.
And
the chicken is winning. The cow doesn't know what to think.
Yeah.
And the cow backs up, and the chicken kept pecking her nose, you know. And it flop up her wings and squawk at her and peck her nose, and the cow just kept backing up. And so the chicks were safe. It's pretty funny.
Wow,
That is funny.
that's good.
Okay, that reminds me, Dad, of the egg story. Speaking of chickens and eggs.
Yeah, well, when I was growing up, one of my jobs was to collect the eggs from the free-range chickens. So I'd have to go check in the bushes and find the eggs and bring them into the house. Well, one time I found this whole pile of eggs. I thought, oh, I hit the jackpot. But then I looked closer and I thought, oh, wow, there's leaves over it and the eggs are all dusty. So I thought, oh, this nest has been sitting there a long time. I wonder if these eggs are any good. I thought, I don't want to bring in, 15 eggs that are rotten or something. So I picked up one of them. And I was thinking, it's probably rotten because it looks like it's been there a while. So I just threw it on a rock and just see it opened up. Oh, man, it just smelled to high heaven. And it was sure rotten. So I thought, oh, I got a bunch of rotten eggs, but I better check another one. So I picked up one and I threw it at a tree about 4 or 5 feet away, hit the tree, on there. And oh, man, that one was rotten too. So I'm thinking, what can I do with 13 rotten eggs now? And so I thought, well, I can't bring them inside. I wonder if I can throw them at something. And we had a big fence across the back of our yard, 6-foot fence, but as you've heard, it's an acre of land, so it's pretty far away. So I thought, oh, I wonder if I can hit the fence with an egg, a rotten egg. And so I pick up one and I chuck it down there, and it missed. It hit in front of the fence, and it's like, all right, I'll try it again. So I throw one again, and boom, hit the fence, all over the fence. It was a great shot and everything. It's like, all right, that was cool. Made a big splat on the fence. So I pick up another one. I'm all excited. I throw it, and it threw it over the fence into the neighbor's yard, right into their backyard. And I thought, I'm throwing rotten eggs into the neighbor's yard. I better get out of here. So I just ran in the house and figured, okay, no more rotten eggs for me.
Game over.
Anyway.
I love that. And then Papa and Dad, you guys both have a story together about the car.
Oh, boy. You had an old 40 Ford, I think, the maroon car.
It was a 1940 Mercury.
Yeah. Yep.
And I had just been restoring it, and it was pretty good shape. I was pretty far along. It wasn't finished, but it was pretty good. And so I had it in the garage. I can't remember what I was trying to do, but I decided to tow it out of the garage. We have a somewhat steep driveway, not real steep, but steep enough that a car would roll on it. I tied a piece of electrical wire, like Romex, heavy wire, to the bumper between my truck and this car, and was towing it up the hill. And I was going to back it down into where I think we were going to put it in the carport or something.
Yeah.
Anyway, we got it up the hill, and Keith is in it to steer it, and the wire broke.
And the bad thing was, I had a friend over. I still remember his name, Miles. And one time he came over. It's like, yeah, let's ride in this car as my dad pulls it up the hill, and then I can steer it and back it into where he wants to go. And there was only one seat. I remember there was only the driver's seat. And so Miles sat on old, like a soapbox on the passenger side. So he's sitting on a box and I'm sitting in there, and we're slowly getting pulled up. And I still remember looking out the front window and seeing the wire start to unwrap. And I'm thinking, wait, look, the wire's unwrapping. Dad, wait. And just then, boom, it broke and unwrapped. And we started going backwards towards the garage. And I didn't know what to do, and I didn't know how to steer it or anything. And so I'm just hanging on. And so I hang on to the steering wheel, and Miles, he sort of, and he sort of grabs like the side little handle of the door. But that was about all that was there. And we just rolled straight back. It was like in slow motion, but it happened pretty quick, and I didn't know what to do. And so I'm just hanging on, and we rolled right, and we crashed.
It crashed into the garage,
the corner of the garage,
and broke part of the wall of the garage down. And bashed in the back end of my car.
Yeah. And so I sort of hang on. I was jerked. Well, my friend Miles, he was thrown to the back seat. He just went flying because that little soapbox he was sitting on just flew back. And so he didn't really like that day when he came over to my house.
He never came over
never
again.
Really came
huh?
over again, yeah.
It crashed in the back lower panel. It's like the edge of the trunk. The deck lid got crunched, and so I thought, oh man, so I was pretty frustrated. So I didn't even work on that car for months.
Yeah,
I just pushed it aside and forget it.
And
I found another old Mercury in a wrecking yard, and I got those parts off of that other car. Yeah. So I had to replace those parts on this car. So that was a big job.
I remember you were out there with a sledgehammer trying to fix the corner of the wall because it had like come off the foundation or something, and it was a slab, so it scooted, down the slab, and so he's just banging away to try to straighten up the garage. It was sort of a scary day, but it was a wild adventure there.
You're not so tough without your car, are you?
Hey, Dad, when you said that, though, it totally reminds me of just that small story recently when we went to Washington and then we did the fishing, right?
Yeah.
I had the fishing pole, and it's our extended Uncle Monty's nice fishing poles, like $500 fishing poles. And he's letting us use them on our own, right?
And we're getting into casting.
Oh, yeah.
We're just like whipping it out, and that lure is flying way across the river.
Right. So I take one big cast, and I go, here we go. And I cast it way out there, and then I realize, man, this fishing pole just got a whole lot lighter. And then I look and a whole half the fishing pole is flying out there into the water.
Dad,
I didn't even know what I was just like, Dad. And I didn't know how to explain the situation, so I just kept yelling, Dad. And you're like, what? And I look and I'm like, and I'm just holding up the pole because I'm like, the pole came apart. And so then I'm trying to reel back in the pole.
Just reel it in.
So we're reeling it in, and luckily it caught the rest of the pole, so it did drag the pole back. But
so we got it, put it back together. Wow. Okay, we don't have to tell Monty.
We're like, let's not tell him.
Threw half of his pole into the river.
That
good. Was funny.
Okay, how about this? Yeah. Okay, so then when Dad was graduating high school, Dad, you decided to go to Bible college.
Right.
Oh, actually.
Yep.
Yeah, we'll talk about Genesis, but that just reminds me of, do you remember at the keg party, Dad?
Yeah.
It's just funny.
I'm a Christian, and I was raised Christian, and I decided that in my own personal life that I wouldn't drink alcohol, just for me personally. But I was invited to a kegger party, beer party.
Give me a keg of beer.
By this girl that I had known in high school. She said, yeah, all the high school guys will be there, and you can see what everybody's doing. It was like at the end of the summer after we graduated. And so I talked to my parents and said, yeah, I want to go, and I'm going to go early and leave early. So don't worry about that. I'm not going to drink or anything. But I want to go and see what people are doing and tell them that I'm going to Bible college. So I went and trying to be a witness and that kind of thing. And so I went there, and first thing, right when the girl opened the door, when I walked in, she tried to hand me a beer. And I said, no, thanks. I don't drink. And I'm looking around.
She's like, what the heck are you doing here?
Well, we have a few Cokes over there. So I got my Coke, and I'm walking around this party, and I see Glenn. He was the star in the basketball team, and he big, tall, good-looking guy, blonde-haired. He had all
real
the girls.
Val Kilmer.
Yeah, he had all the girls around him, and it was weird because he sort of turned to me. I didn't even know he really knew me, and maybe he didn't, but he just said, "Hey, so what are you doing? After high school?" So I thought,
he was probably a few drinks in, Dad.
Yeah, I think he was, because of what happened next. I said, "Well, I'm going to Bible college." And he looked at me and he said, what? Like barber college? What? You going to barber college, like cut hair and stuff? And I said, no, Bible college. And by that time, it was quiet in the room. And so everybody heard me say, Bible college. And everybody looks at me. It's like, and then he started laughing. Bible college. Oh, brother. Started laughing, drinking his beer, and talking to his girlfriends, whatever. And so that sort of fell flat, but it's like, well, at least somebody maybe there heard that, hey, there's somebody that's going to a Bible college. Had a little bit of ambition, and conviction and character and things like that.
That's pretty funny though, Dad. It's too bad, but we've all been in that situation, and somebody just trashes you, and you're like, well, okay.
And laugh. Yeah. I was, as I said, a Christian going to high school, I remember. I decided to wear a Jesus belt buckle.
I need your clothes.
That I made. I made the belt and the belt buckle. And I remember second period, either first or second period at PE, went to the locker room. And, locker rooms were real fun.
This is where the fun begins.
In high school. Anyway, get in there, start changing. And some guy noticed my belt buckle. He goes, hey, who's that? Like Led Zeppelin or something,
With the long hair.
With the long hair, yeah. I said, no, it's Jesus. And he said, who? And I said, Jesus, Jesus Christ. And he said, what? Jesus Christ. And he said it really loud. It was interesting. And then he starts laughing and told the whole locker room, hey, guys, this guy's got Jesus Christ on his belt buckle. And starts everybody's laughing. And I'm changing right there and thinking, well, at least I'm trying to be a witness, trying to stand up for what's right. Anyway, you never know.
Dad, that's boldness, though. I like the boldness,
maybe it'll make an impact on somebody.
Well, and just showing that you can stand up for your beliefs. You don't have to be afraid of people laughing at you, and you can take it and kind of whatever. That's on them, right?
Yeah.
Real leadership is showing people how it's done so that they understand it's the right way and getting them to adopt it. And then being a leader means you go against the tide when the tide is wrong. You go against the crowd when the crowd is wrong. You go against the establishment when the establishment is degenerate and sick. And then by example and by competence and by will and by strength, in the gym and join you.
That's a good one. So speaking of the Bible college, so you went to Genesis Bible College, and then Papa followed you up there. What was that all about, Papa? You couldn't let Dad go?
No. We were both going. Actually, it was my idea to go there before Keith.
Okay.
Keith decided to go with me.
Because
I don't quite remember it that way,
Dad,
anyway.
Dad tells me, Papa came with me. But you're saying he came with you.
Yeah.
We both decided to go.
Okay.
One of my good friends, Bill McKee, was going too, and he told me about it and stuff. So I thought, that'd be good. And I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to pursue in college anyway. So I thought it'd be good to go to a small Bible college and get more mature and grow up a little more and sort of figure out life from a young adult perspective. So we went together, and the school actually had moved up to Oregon. So we had to move to Oregon, and I didn't stay with them.
We actually bought a house in Corvallis, Oregon.
They had the house, and I just stayed in the dorms with the guys, the apartments.
Cool. And so then did you guys visit on weekends and hang out here and there?
I'd go take my laundry home and things like that. But it was fun sort of seeing them in classes or at the worship time or the time that we were together. That was nice.
People are like, why do you hang out with that old dude so much?
Yeah, that's my dad. Yeah.
It's kind of funny. Keith had a real good friend.
Dave Cheddick.
I think. Anyway, he came over to our house to have dinner with us one night in the house we had bought. And we had told him, if you want, you bring your laundry over. We've got a laundry room where you can wash your clothes. So we were sitting there waiting for dinner time. And so he's from Canada.
Canada is a very special place.
And people in Canada talk a little bit different than people from America. They have slightly different colloquialisms,
Yeah.
And so he looks over at me and he says, where's the washroom? And I thought he meant to go do his laundry. So I said, it's in the garage. Because that's where our laundry is. So he wanted to go wash up. And so he looks at me and he couldn't believe me that our washroom is in the garage. So we had a big laugh.
Yeah.
That's funny. I love that. Okay, and then Dad, speaking of laundry, that just reminded me of the Easter service and your pants.
Yeah, when I was a kid, we, as a family, went to Easter service, and we dressed all up and everything. And the Easter service, I was probably about 8 or 10 years old, and we decided to go to the park first, just to have a little bit of family time, and then we'd head off to Easter service. Well, when we got to the park, it's just hanging around right here, and there was a little creek down there, just down the grass a little bit. And hey, be careful, don't get in the water. Oh, okay. So I just sort of walked down there, and there was this little ledge that went along the creek, sort of brick ledge that went along. So I started walking along this ledge, and you know what happened. I lost my balance. Whoa. And I fell in, and luckily I landed on my feet, but I still got my shoes and my pants all wet, and I jumped back out, but I was all wet.
From the waist down.
From the, at least thighs down. And I thought, what? We got to go home and I got to change. And my mom said, no, we don't have enough time. We got to get to Easter service.
It's like, what am I going to do?
Well, my mom made me sit in the back seat. I had to take off my pants, and she hung them out the window as we're driving to church to try to dry them off a little bit. I'm just sort of sitting back there all embarrassed and everything. So anyway, it's sort of half dried, and put my pants back on real quick for Easter service. I remember that one.
Papa, do you remember that? Do you remember that happening?
I remember him getting wet, but I didn't remember about the pants.
Hanging the pants out the window.
No, that's the best part of the story is the pants flapping out the window.
Yep.
So then after Genesis, Papa, I know you guys did a lot of traveling with YWAM, right? That was after the kids were graduated from high school, correct?
Right.
So what prompted that, and where did you guys end up going? I know you went all over the place, so tell me a little bit about that.
In Santa Rosa, there's a church there that had a lot of guest speakers. Every Sunday night, they had another guest speaker, it seemed like. And we spent a lot of time going over to that church because we liked hearing what was going on. So there were different people like maybe Brother Andrew, who was God's smuggler, who would go into Iron Curtain country smuggling Bibles.
Surely you can't be serious.
I am serious, and don't call me Shirley.
And so we heard a lot of stories like that.
That's pretty radical. That's pretty cool.
It is very radical. And so that kind of got us all jacked up that maybe we should get involved in something where we can do some of that stuff, you know? And so that's why we went to Genesis, to go up there and be in that Bible study and prepare for possibly going into some mission work somewhere. So we thought maybe we should go in Youth with a Mission, YWAM, YWAM, Youth with a Mission. So thinking about that, we figured, well, okay, let's do that.
That's pretty crazy, though, because I ended up going to YWAM quite a few years later.
We were so impressed and involved in YWAM that we wanted everybody to go have a YWAM experience.
Yeah.
So we talked to you kids, we talked to Keith and, our kids, and anybody who would listen, we'd tell them about YWAM. So the word got around.
Aaron did that, too.
Yeah, Aaron did.
Aaron, my cousin.
Yeah.
Comic book artist. We love Aaron.
Yeah.
Yep.
So where'd you go with YWAM?
Okay, so the first thing we did is we went to what they call a discipleship training school, DTS, discipleship training school, in Oregon. So that was like our big jump away from home. I remember there was a guy at our church before we left. He says to me, "You mean you're actually going to quit your job and go do this?" And I said, "Yeah, we're going to quit our job and go do stuff for the Lord." And he said, "I can't believe it. How can you do that?" It's like people couldn't believe that you could actually leave your employment. So we learned early that whatever God calls you to do, He provides.
Amen to that.
So if He wants you to go do something, He'll pay for it. One way or the other, you have to go by faith. So it was a faith builder to trust God to see that we would be able to do the things we believed we were supposed to do. So anyway, we went to the school in Oregon, and when the school was over, we thought, now what are we going to do? So Pat and I both talked about it. We thought it would really be cool to just be leaders in one of their schools. So we could be like a group leader, and we could help other kids who came, because we were older a little bit. Anyway, so... Well, actually, we found out there was a school in England for training people to be school leaders. So we thought, well, let's just go do that. We'll go do that school. So we went to England. That was our first trip. Went to England and participated in that school. And that was really a neat place because it was in this big lodge, this house that was out in the countryside, built by some rich people many, many years ago. And this house... like 50 people. So can you imagine a house that big? It housed that many people, and there were probably like a dozen fireplaces in this house. It was all built out of rock and brick. And
that sounds really cool looking.
Way out in the country,
Wow.
The place was called Homestead Manor. So anyway, we did that, and then we went on outreach from that place, and in that outreach, we went to Spain, and we'd never been to Spain before. So in the outreach, we actually got buses. We drove across the English Channel into Europe and drove in that bus all the way to Spain, which is a long way. So YWAM had bought an old power plant. It was on a creek with a big water wheel, and they had turbines inside, and they generated electricity for the local people. And so they had bought this place, and they didn't generate electricity anymore. But so we lived in this place way out in the country on this creek. That was kind of fun.
Yeah.
But water was at a real premium. So we had to be very careful with how we used our water. So that was our first trip, going to Spain and back.
What do you do in Spain? What was kind of the average day in the life?
It was an outreach, so we had learned different kinds of skits and things that we could do in front of people out on the street. And so we would just go out into town, and where people would be hanging out, like the town square or something, and we'd do these skits, and people would come around and they'd listen to our things, and someone would laugh at us. Sometimes people would get saved. You never know what you're going to run into. I remember one story. We were in Brussels, Belgium, and we were out on the street just talking to people. There was this one guy who was kind of like a full-on evangelist. So he had a little stool. So he'd bring the stool with him, and he'd get out in the middle of the street, and then he'd stand on his stool and start yelling, people, I have good news for you. Everybody listen, I have great news for you. And people will be thinking, who's this idiot, you know? And so people would crowd around because it's an, you know,
entertainment.
Kind of weird.
Yeah.
And he'd start giving them the gospel. And so he'd give them Bible stories and preach gospel, and people would get saved. So it was pretty amazing.
That is crazy.
Yeah.
Anyway, we were in Brussels one time, and anyway, this guy spotted me. So this man, he just comes over, he starts yelling at me. He says, you can't do this love thing you guys are talking about. He said, you can't survive life unless you have hate. That was the way he told me.
Really?
He says, you've got to have hate to make it in life. I said, really? Why don't you tell me your story? I mean, why do you have to have hate? So he actually slowed down, and we stopped and talked for a while. He had grown up in an orphanage that was run by these men, and all the kids in the orphanage hated the men. So I don't know what kind of orphanage it was, but he hated those guys. And so I said, well, I think it was supposed to be some kind of a Christian thing. So I said, well, I'll tell you what, you can't judge God by what those men did to you. Yeah. And so he said, well, yeah, maybe. So I said, I'll tell you what you do. You have a Bible? He said, well, I think I got one somewhere. I could get one. I said, I'll tell you what, if you get a Bible and you go off by yourself and sit down somewhere and read the Gospel of John. Yeah. That's one of the books in the Bible. I told him how to find it. Yeah. You read the Gospel of John, and you sit there and read that, and then you say, God, is this really true? You just, by yourself, you just ask God, God, is this stuff really true? You go out and do that and see what will happen to your life. Yeah. He says, okay, I'll do that.
Wow.
That's awesome.
I suppose you did. I never saw the guy again.
Yeah. Wow.
I mean, that was in Belgium, and we were back to England after that.
Yeah. Wow. That's a wild story. Yeah. You never know. You could have changed his life, Papa. Yeah. He might be telling the same story.
It could be.
On a podcast somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's wild. Okay, where else did you travel for YWAM?
When we did that school to learn how to be school leaders, that was actually in Switzerland. So there we are in Switzerland. We're students in the school, but we're helping to lead the school while we're students. So that was cool. So we got to do a lot of traveling through Switzerland. We got to go see the Swiss Alps and go through some of the little villages. So that was a lot of fun to feel like we were really out in the world. We're world travelers now.
Yeah.
See, where else did we go? We went on several outreaches. One outreach we went, I remember going on the train into Czechoslovakia and Hungary. We actually met in Austria, which was a Western style of country, not communist, but Western. And so we could do what we wanted there. So there was a YWAM base there. And so we prepared to go into Eastern Europe from Austria. And so we were on the train. I remember going across the border into Hungary. And on the train, when we crossed the border, we saw, I mean, it was just open land. And there was this huge fence everywhere. Wow. And there were guards on the fence with tummy guns on their shoulders.
Son, we live in a world that has walls, and those walls have to be guarded by men with guns.
Every 200 feet or something, there was another guard with a gun ready to shoot people if they tried to go through the fence. So we were going across on the train.
Oh, boy.
And we were riding right across the border. And so we started hollering at the military guys, hey, you know. And we didn't know what they'd do. So
why would you yell at guys with guns, Papa?
Well, what could they do? They weren't going to start shooting the train.
Okay. You never know.
I know.
Yeah.
That's
a communist country.
I remember going into Budapest. Well, Budapest is actually two cities. On one side of the river is Buda. The other side of the river is Pest.
Oh,
so
wow.
the two cities right together on the two sides of the river is Budapest. And so we spent some time there, and we just arrived on the train, and we didn't know from nothing. We didn't know where to go, where to stay. We had nothing lined up. We were just a bunch of Christians. We were going to go try to save people. And so we arrived in town, And so we're off the train, and we go into the train station. We're trying to find out where we could find someplace to stay. And this taxi cab driver, you know how taxi cab drivers can be in strange towns. So he kind of took us under his wing, and he actually found us a house to live in. Wow. What happened was the house that he lined up was a house where quite a number of people could stay in this house. So people were living there. So the people, you know, they're kind of the poverty area. And so the people actually moved out of their house so we could move in and pay them money to stay in their house. So we paid them a little bit of money. Each of us chipped in stuff. And so they were making money. They had to find somewhere to live, but it was their town, so they could find something. So we were living in this house. So we lived there for 2 weeks, living in this house, and we'd go out every night and talk to people in the main part of town. So that was a lot. It was very interesting. We learned a lot.
Anywhere else?
We went a lot of places. I can't remember where they are right now.
Turkmenistan.
Yeah, Turkmenistan.
Brought me back a fur hat from Turkmenistan.
Actually, Michael Price, who became a friend of mine, he was a YWAM leader. He wanted to go to Turkmenistan to minister to the Turkmen people. And so he asked me if I'd like to go along with him, because he was going to go on a 2-week tour just to kind of check things out, to see if he could figure out how he could work becoming a missionary over there. So I said, okay, well, that's great. I'll go over there with you for 2 weeks. And a couple other people went with us too. So there was a YWAM base in Azerbaijan. And Azerbaijan is on the west side of this lake, which is right at the south end of the Mediterranean. And the other side of this lake is Azerbaijan. So we actually flew from Azerbaijan to Turkmenistan to spend some time there. And so we got to meet some Turkmen people, and boy, that was weird.
Okay, so changing gears a little bit, tell me about jail, Papa. You've been to jail so many times, more times than anybody, really.
I used to go every Saturday night to the jail. The officers would let us take one of the pods in the jail, and all the inmates in that pod would come into the classroom that was part of the jail, and we would do Bible lessons. So sometimes we'd do Bible stories, sometimes we'd have a video, maybe we'd do a famous teacher, and he would have a good sermon that would be really cool. So we did a lot of things, and a lot of times the inmates would have lots of questions. Sometimes I would just sit and talk to them, and they would tell their stories, and sometimes they would have stories. I remember one time there was this guy, we had just come in the classroom, so I'd be in the classroom, and then the jail people would let one of the groups of the jail come in, so they'd all come filing in, and so they all would find a seat around my seat, so they would be ready to listen. And this one guy came in a little bit later than the rest of them, and he's kind of cool guy. He's, you can tell by the way he walked. Like, don't mess with me, because I'm tough, And he went way around the other guys, sat way in back of everybody. And so I did my spiel. I finished whatever I was doing. So 20 or 30 minutes later, I'm sitting there and I'm kind of opening things up for questions. So this guy sitting way in the back, he put his hand up, kind of, could I ask a question? I said, sure, what's going on? So he stood up and he says, I hate my life, and I want to know this God you're talking about.
Wow.
I said, oh, really? Sure. Well, come up to the front so you can hear better. And started talking about stuff. So he's telling me his story. He was a leader of a gang. He was the enforcer. Boy. If anybody got out of line in the gang, he was the guy who brought the discipline in the gang thing. So you could figure he did a lot of bad stuff. Yeah. So anyway, I spent time with him, and he came back several weeks in a row. He came back every week. He was always there. He wanted to learn what he could. So he learned about Bible. So he got himself a Bible. Somehow, I don't know how he got it, but he got a Bible. Maybe I gave it to him. I'm not sure. But anyway, the next week he would come in, and his Bible would be all full of stickers all through the pages. He'd been studying. Wow. And one of the things about the jail is that the jail holds people while they're waiting for their court appearance, and then they would be off to prison. And so a lot of people in the jail were there temporarily rather than serving a jail sentence. They're really waiting until they found out whether they're going to be convicted for something more serious. So that was his case. So anyway, he comes in, and his Bible is all full of these stickers. And he says, I know I'm facing a hard time, but I want you to know I am blessed. And he held up his Bible.
Wow. That's really good.
Yeah.
That's great.
Well, thanks for doing that work there, Papa, and being a minister to those people in the jails. I'm sure that has really helped out a lot of them, even if they didn't come back to you and tell you that they were blessed, you know.
Yeah. God's word is powerful. And when God's word goes out, it bears fruit. So never be afraid to share God's word, because you never know who it might touch. And I've seen it touch a lot of people in the jail. Been some amazing stories. I could tell you more if I could remember them right now, but well, my story, I was going to share this verse. Some of Jesus' disciples asked him, Peter came to him and said, we have left everything and followed you. What will there be for us? Matthew 19, starting in verse 27. So in verse 28, Jesus said to them, truly I say to you that you who have followed me in the regeneration, when the Son of Man will sit on his glorious throne, you also shall sit upon 12 thrones, judging the 12 tribes of Israel. And then he says this, and everyone who has left houses, or brothers or sisters, or father or mother, or children or farms, for my name's sake, shall receive many times as much, and shall inherit eternal life. So that was a pretty impressive verse to me, that if you leave whatever your life is to follow the Lord and do what he's so calling you to do, he says, you'll receive many times as much as what you've left behind. And I just want to say that we have been so richly blessed by the Lord since we had been in YWAM. He took care of everything for us. Everywhere we went, we had everything we needed. We spent 13 years in YWAM. After 13 years with them, we went back and we decided we were going to build a home. And well, now we have this beautiful home up on the hillside in the forest, and it's just a gorgeous house. And we have that not because of anything we've done, really. I mean, I built it myself, but I built it because God provided everything for us. It was just amazing how everything just worked wonderfully. I remember when I was toward the end of building it, just to give you an idea how God just gave us favor with everything. Building inspectors in Grass Valley have a kind of a bad rep. Like, they're pretty tough on people. I mean, they don't let builders get away with anything. And they're always checking things over and over and always making people do things over. Well, anyway, when I was pretty much done building the house, and I called for another inspection, this inspection was for the shower. The house is finished. We were just doing the interior. House was built, but the interior was not finished. And so I called her for an inspection for the shower pan. You have to do this rubber lining and tar and all kinds of stuff to before you tile. And so I called for that inspection. And he comes, he looks at it, and so he walks around for a while. He's looking at the house, and there was quite a number of different inspections yet to go. So this inspector comes up to me and says, you know what, I'm just going to sign you off. So he checked everything off on the inspection card. So I was all signed off, even though it wasn't finished.
Wow.
So that's the kind of thing that God did for us. Wow. So we were able to actually move in the house before it was finished, which you're not supposed to do. But it gave us a place to live. Instead of living in Keith's basement.
Which is where we're recording the podcast right now.
Yeah.
Yes, this basement has seen a lot.
That is cool. Sounds like you and Grandma really must have had a really strong relationship in order to go travel the world and do all these different things and adventures. But obviously no relationship is without its fair share of ups and downs. So I'm just curious how you guys dealt with conflicts that came up over the years.
Oh, we never had much conflict. I mean, it's kind of interesting. I'll just throw this out. Pat is a very analytical person about everything. She's always checking up stuff. And so she's always got these questions about stuff. And so if there was any conflict, it's because Pat's questioning something. So I'd have to explain to her, no, this will work this way. We can do that way. And so we'd work it out like that. Yeah. So that's probably the biggest thing is I would have to kind of, no, it's okay. We're going to do it this way or whatever.
Yeah. I should probably ask her the same question.
Yeah.
You'll get a different answer. Probably.
Yeah, probably.
That's all right. Everybody's got their own perspective. And
But we get along fine. And we have our arguments. You can ask Keith or the girls. We did argue once in a while. Who doesn't? We still do sometimes. But we don't have an argumentative life.
Right.
It says if something comes up and if she sees it different than I do, well, you'd have to discuss it. So if she doesn't agree with my way or I don't agree with her way, then you got to work it out.
Yeah.
So you could call it an argument, but it's more just figuring out, okay, how are we going to do this? So she says her part, and I say my part, and when we check different things out, and then you decide. So that's the way life is.
Yeah. Okay, now what is your favorite thing about being a grandparent?
Oh, playing with the little kids. Trouble is, they're all grown up now. But now we have great grandkids. And they're going to be actually coming to our house this coming week. Yeah. So I'm looking forward to see how it's going to work out. I don't know how it'll be because we haven't been with these kids hardly any. So I'm looking forward to it.
That's good. Okay, so now this brings us to the last question, Papa. Now that you're in your 80s, what kinds of things are you thinking about now as you reflect on life? You've lived a very long life. So what are you thinking about now these days?
I get involved with projects around the house, taking care of the yard or repairing the house or maybe adding something on. That's part of my life is being a builder. I've done a lot of building. I've done building all over the world, really. I've done building in Switzerland. I've done building in Spain. I've done building on boats in Brazil. I've done building here in California in a number of different places. So I just enjoy, putting stuff together, But I'm getting old and I'm getting where I don't have as much energy as I used to. So part of it is, I'd like to do this or that, but then I think, well, maybe I'd better hire somebody to do it.
Yeah.
But I do take on stuff. Right. I built a woodshed recently out back, and I've done a couple other building things recently. Yeah. So I still do stuff, but it has to be what I can do in my 80 years old age.
Well, that's good. You're keeping yourself busy.
I tell people you need to put off turning 80 as long as you can.
Yeah.
Oh, man. That's good.
Keep that in mind.
Dad, you'll keep that in mind?
Yep.
Cool. Well, Papa and Dad, thank you so much for joining me on this. Right. I'm really glad to have been able to talk to you guys. And Papa, obviously, I respect you a lot for all the work you've done with ministry and just how you've raised my dad and, and then how he raised me. So I think I turned out all right. We'll see.
Thank you so much for tuning in. If you enjoyed this episode, leave a rating/review. 5 stars is a power play. Be sure to follow the show and keep up with me on social medias at Spencer Whiteout to stay up to date. As always, stay tuned, stay hyped. That's a wrap.
Inserting exclusive audio recording from the vault.
I'm sorry?
This is really good so far.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll tell you another story.
Okay.
Going in that room, it reminded me, what? There was a whole bunch of kids here. I mean, it was like a big reunion. We were all upstairs. And after dinner, we decided to play hide and go seek. And so I was... I probably shouldn't tell you this story.
Tell me.
Huh?
Tell me.
So the kids were all playing hide and go seek. And this is... I got to quit laughing. So this short time after lunch, and I was having a problem with gas. And so I thought, oh no, I gotta So I said, how am I gonna get rid of this? So I decided, I'll go in the basement where where nobody will hear me.
Wait, really?
So I go in the basement, and
Dad, Papa is like...
so I...
Dad, Papa is like laughing, crying right now.
So I cut loose, and it was big and loud. It was big and loud. Yeah, and then just after I...
You don't want to have this on tape.
I started hearing this giggling.
He had to fart so bad he goes into the room people are playing hide and seek.
Yeah, they're playing. And so 2 girls were hiding in there. I didn't think anybody was in there. So I cut loose, and then I hear all this giggling. So then they come out, and we have a big laugh, and I'm kind of embarrassed.
Yeah.
Papa, that's an amazing story. I love that. It's so funny.
Oh my.
And that's it.